Well, folks, on the eve of a brand new season, welcome in, folks, once again to the WNBA 365 Network, your 24/7, 365 comprehensive home for everything revolving around the WNBA and the rest of the women's basketball world. And for the next 90 minutes, we will break down the historic 20th season of WNBA basketball. This is the WNBA 365 2016 season preview show. Join the night, folks, as always, by Eric Nemchok, the great writer from today's Fast Break in Elmhurst, Illinois. And for the time being, up in Los Angeles, California, is Crystal Thomas. All joining us, folks, of course, is Marquez Anderson from @WBB_247 on Twitter. And also, folks, kind of joining us as well is longtime WNBA writer Mike Peden, joining us from the land of 1,000 lakes in the great state of Minnesota. Everybody, good evening. Good to see you. Welcome aboard the 2016 season preview show. How's it going tonight, everyone? Good to see you.
Hello.
It's land of 10,000 lakes.
Oh man, Yoshi just ran away from me. He fell off a cliff.
Yoshi. Eric, you know with Yoshi, you just use him to increase the vertical of your jumps, right?
Yeah. I should try that.
Yoshi's expendable.
With that, folks, as always, again, we'll be here for the next
Just like
90
every
minutes
sports
up
player,
until
just about.
10:30 Pacific, 1:30 a.m. on the East Coast. As always, folks, we're open for interaction on Twitter and also as well in the live chat box, of course. So hit any of us up on Twitter. The network Twitter handle is at WNBA365. Any of us on Twitter, it's at CalamaC3. Tanisha Stewart will be joining us momentarily at ShortyMama24, at Pup1010 or at NemChalkE. Marquez's handle is at WBB_247. Or hit up Mike on Twitter, folks. His handle is at TheSportsBrain on Twitter. And, of course, include the hashtag WNBA365. We'll get to your commentary on Twitter or in the live chat box ASAP. Well, guys, as we all know, again, a monumental, historic year for the WNBA plan, the 20th season of the longest-running women's professional sports league at any level, again, or any sport, I should say. Of course, guys, came with major change earlier in January of this year, where the WNBA Board of Governors announced changes to both the playoff seeding qualification procedures as well as the postseason format, along with a new schedule format. To recap, folks, the playoff structure, again, we'll get to the schedule momentarily, but again, the playoff structure, folks, goes as follows here. They will take the top 8 teams, regardless of conference by overall record for the 8-team field. The number of playoff rounds has increased from 3 to 4, and the top 2 seeds receive a bye to the third round, which is going to be the semifinals, and the 3rd and 4th seeds receive a bye to the second round of the postseason. The teams will be reseeded after each postseason round does conclude. The first and second rounds will follow a March Madness/NCAA single elimination play-in game format similar to that format. As an example, the first round will feature the 5 and 8 seeds playing head-to-head, and then the 6 and 7 seeds playing head-to-head. Round 2 will feature the 3rd seed hosting the lowest-seeded first-round winners that survived, and the number 4 seed will host the other first-round winner. The semifinals will feature a best 3 out of 5 format, with the number 1 overall seed playing the lowest remaining seed, and number 2 overall seed meeting the other remaining team. The 1 and 2 seeds will host games 1, 2, and 5 of the format, and the lower-seeded teams will host games 3 and 4 in each series. The WNBA Finals will remain a best-of-5 series following the same 2-2-1 format. Well, Crystal, we'll start with you. Again, now we know that this, sounds like it's utter lunacy, but I think, though, that this is a perfect time, though, to kind of, I think, break away from a traditional type of a playoff system where you see it in baseball with this new wild card system. The NFL's had the wild card system for a while. The NHL brought in a wild card system just a couple seasons ago. Major League Soccer has done this. Crystal, what do you believe and what do you think in your overall stance and thoughts about the new format? Again, it sounds pretty loony on paper, but probably after we see it work out after year one, it might, I think, become a new way to do playoff seeding and playoff format. So what do you think about it and why?
I think, for right now it's a trial run, but I do think it's going to make the season that much more competitive, because now you can no longer just, try to win to get a spot. Now you have to do well from the jump, and I think that's going to make a lot of teams want to play well from the beginning. We'll see if it keeps on. I think what they're going to do is probably do it for a few years and see how the fans and the players take to it, and then after that we'll see what happens. But I think the weird thing is the buys. I'm going to have to get used to seeing the buys. I think that's the only thing that's going to kind of – I do think, though, this will make this season much more competitive.
So, Eric, again, it's the 8 teams with the highest win percentage, regardless of conference qualifying for the postseason. So, very well, folks, that we could have, a Western Conference versus Western Conference, Eastern Conference versus Eastern Conference, or the regular Western versus Eastern. So, Eric, what do you think, though? Because I think this is going to be something pretty intriguing to watch, and that this is probably a way, though, that, that we know that the actual best team officially won the WNBA title. But Eric, what do you believe though, and what do you think about the new playoff format debuting this season?
Well, I love the idea of pretty much doing away with the conferences. I think that's really cool because in the past you look at it as like, well, the Eastern Conference is really balanced, the Western Conference is really top heavy, and the first round of the playoffs would be okay, top two seeds sweep, no problem. But I think now you're right. It gives the better teams more of a chance. Because like last year, you say, well, Connecticut could have gotten in the playoffs if they were in the West or something like that. But that's not going to be the case anymore, and because you're going to have the best teams, no matter which conference they're in, being in the playoffs. And also, they're expanding interconference play. So like Eastern Conference teams used to only play Western Conference teams twice, I believe, but now they're playing them like 3 or 4 times, which is also really cool because you're not seeing the same people over and over again. I don't like the I don't like the buys. I agree with Crystal, and I don't like the best of one. I don't like the single elimination. I think that it allows for too much variance. It'll make it more exciting, but if you want the best teams to win the title, then you have to ensure that the best teams have a chance to actually get to the title game. It's fun. It'll be fun seeing like an 8th seed upset a 1 seed maybe, but how long can they sustain that success? So it's a little bit of a mix for me. I agree with Crystal. Just see how it works. If it works, great. If nobody likes it, they can just get rid of it, I guess.
Marquez, I think that what they could have done was keep the 2 out of 3 format, like what we'd see in round 1, even round 2, as we did in the previous playoff format, for those first 2 rounds of those 1-game play. And I think that Eric's onto something that they could have probably kept the same 2-3 or 3-5 format. But again, they wanted to try something new. But again, Marquez, how about your thoughts though on the new playoff format for 2016 and perhaps beyond?
Well, I agree. I don't exactly like the single elimination thing because, one fluke play or call by the refs, and that means that someone goes on and they may not be as deserving as, say, the other team. That doesn't really leave any room for adjustments to be made. But in terms of the whole league, that just means that every game from day one matters, and you have to worry about everybody, not only your conference, but the guys on the other side, too.
Yeah. And, Mike, obviously perhaps a couple things may have boiled down to a couple of plays in certain situations. And again, we did have 2 out of 3 in both rounds last season. Now, again, I kind of get what they're getting at. They want to add perhaps a little March Madness magic to the first 2 rounds of those single elimination games. But I think, though, that Eric was really unassuming, though, when he said he's not really in favor. I think it should have just been 2 out of 3 all the way through. But, Mike, how about your thoughts on the new playoff format for the season?
It's interesting you mentioned that because if you go 2 out of 3, and some folks thought, well, maybe even add that to one of the later rounds, stamina might be a concern, at least if you were to keep everything else intact. Speaking to a lot of media members, though, it was very little pushback to this new format, and I think a lot of it had to do with the Western Conference Finals being the de facto WNBA Finals, last year notwithstanding, great finals, but a lot of folks felt like with Minnesota and Phoenix and that rivalry that those are the 2 best teams, and now a lot of folks are salivating over the prospect of that matchup. But I think a lot of reaction is still up in the air. I had a chance to talk to Cheryl Reeve at Media Day about it, and she just said, it's a lot of unnavigated territory. A lot of things to be ironed out, and really aren't going to have any clear opinions until we get there, but it does place a premium on getting the top 2 seeds, which the Lynx would have done last year had this playoff format been in place, because it gets you an automatic bye to the semifinals. So it's going to put more of a premium on winning your games. I think you're going to see maybe a little more competition, and now with conferences no longer in effect, those games will have a little more meaning. And I think something else that I'm going to enjoy is more balance in the schedule. As the last few years, we had 5 meetings with some interconference teams, and everyone kind of got tired of it. Now you get a little more balance, and we get to see some more flavor, so to speak, and it also will help with tiebreakers because, with the exception of one, every team is going to play each other 3 times, so it's going to be simple head-to-head record, so things are going to get a little easier in that front.
Yeah, and no wonder, folks, his handle's at the Sportsman on Twitter because he just read my brain and my mind of getting to that new regular season format. Again, folks, the new format for the regular season will go as follows. Again, they're now going to be playing a balanced 34-game schedule for everybody, which will include the following criteria of games, which will include 4 games against one team, 2 home, 2 away, 3 games apiece against the 4 remaining teams, 2 home and 1 away versus 2 teams, and then 1 home and 2 away versus the other 2 teams. And each team's opponent breakdown was selected at random and will be rotated annually to ensure a fair balance of the schedule. Also, as follows, games against the 6 teams in the other conference will be as follows: 3 games against each team, 2 home and 1 away versus 3 teams, and a 1 home, 2 away format versus the remaining 3 teams. And also the opponents for the 2 formats have been selected at random and will be reversed annually in the intra-conference realm. So again, Crystal, now we're going to be having a balanced affair. We won't be having any more of these lopsided either 4 or 5 times versus one, versus opponent X against opponent Y. Crystal, I think it's long overdue, but what do you think, though, about the new schedule format for the season?
I think the new schedule format is great. It lets fans see teams that they probably wouldn't be able to see that often, especially like, for example, when Indiana comes to LA, you really wouldn't be able to see that many times, but now that they play each other 3 or 4 times, you'll be able to see it, each once at, Fever's house and once at LA's house. So I think it's long overdue. I think it, makes it for a better competition. I just wish they wouldn't have had LA play Seattle again. I wish that would have switched in the schedule somewhere for the home opener. But I think it's amazing. I think it's pretty cool that they're actually doing this. It allows us fans to get to see teams you normally wouldn't see that often.
Yeah, and Eric, and I believe this year it's going to be Los Angeles playing in Chicago twice, and Chicago's coming to LA once, I believe, what the schedule said. And I know that everyone has those matchups of 2 places away or 1. But Eric, I think, though, that this is going to, like Crystal said, though, it's going to give the fans, a better opportunity to go and see teams that they probably wouldn't see all that often, because I know that last year LA had played Seattle 4 or 5 times, and then they had played Minnesota 3 or 4 times, pretty hefty with the games in Minneapolis at Target Center. Eric, what do you think, though, about the new schedule format where it's, balanced and you'll see, teams from the West Coast more often than you would as opposed to last season?
Yeah, like I said before, I love the new scheduling for regular season because, as Mike brought up, it means, first of all, you got to win all your games. You can't start 0-7 like the Sparks did last year, for instance, and still you have a shot at the end of the year, But no, it's really cool. I think it was funny. I think it was Kayla McBride. She said something on Stars Media Day. She was like, yeah, now we don't have to face the Lynx and Mercury 5 times in a season. Like, yeah, it's probably pretty good, but. Yeah, it's cool because like you said the example of LA comes to Chicago twice. That means Candace Parker comes home twice in a season instead of once, and that's a big deal for us over here. So yeah, it's cool because like Crystal said, you get to see a different variety of players. Brian Agler doesn't lose to his old team 4 times in a season. I'm just joking. Yeah, it kind of is in line with the whole theme of parity. They're trying to introduce more excitement in the league, and I think this is a major factor in that.
Yeah. And Marquez, obviously, K-Mac was onto something when she jokingly said, now we have to play Phoenix or Minnesota 4 times and worry about the score being way out of control. But again, this adds a lot of parity, I think, to the league this year again, where you're going to be, seeing, everybody come to your place twice, or you're going to someone else's house twice, and again, as Mike brought up though earlier on again, is, of how much is riding on every game you play, where, one mistake and it could, make or break postseason hopes under this new format with the playoffs. But Marquez, how about your thoughts, though, on the new schedule format for 2016?
Well, yeah, since everyone has to play everyone the same amount of times, and with the playoffs being different, it makes those games matter even more so than before. Because, like, I mean, like Kayla said, we don't have to play Minnesota and Phoenix all those times. Because, I mean, we're gonna lose anyway. But I mean, we don't have to see it that many times.
Well, have a little more
But
faith.
That's a good attitude.
but yeah, it just adds a little bit more parity in those games. Me more now since they're gonna count towards playoffs. So I'm glad it happened.
Yeah. Now, and Mike, I think it's good though again that Phoenix and Minnesota will get a few more times to renew their long-standing rivalry. It's going to be amongst both Target Center and TSRA, as I call it, Talking Stick Resort Arena in Phoenix, and then of course when Minnesota comes to LA a couple times this year at Staples Center. And again, I think that we were long overdue, though, I think, for some type of change. We've seen other sports go to a unbalanced schedule. You don't make those trips, those 2 or 3 trips to the East Coast or Midwest every now and then, like it was, prior to them changing formats because of many reasons. But Mike, how about your overall thoughts, though, buddy, on the new format for the scheduling?
As I noted earlier, the tiebreakers are now easier because, again, with the exception of one, you're going to play a team 3 times. So if you want to get that tiebreaker, and there usually is a tiebreaker or two late in the season, now you can go head-to-head. Okay, we know we have to win this matchup to get the tie in our favor, because even with the conferences no longer there, that's still going to be a factor. Overall, I like it. I mean, on my end, you're covering Phoenix or San Antonio just over and over again, and I don't think it's going to really have that much of an impact. I think where you'll see it is now you get to see more teams from outside the conference come in, as we noted earlier. From a local standpoint, it means in the case of Minnesota, like you mentioned, the rivalry with Phoenix, well, they're going to play all 3 of their games by June 7th, and so we'll have to wait until the playoffs for them to face each other again. But I think it's, as we know, to put more of a premium on winning and getting to see a little more from the East, in my case. So really I think where this is going to be a huge benefit is easier tiebreakers to determine playoff spots.
Yeah, so we're all agreeing here that pretty much the format, at least for scheduling, really equates the new playoff format. Guys, one quick comment in the chat box from both Mike and Eric's good buddy Corey in the chat box, from Space Junkie in the chat box. Corey, in regards to the format changes, he says, games still had meaning before, parentheses maybe not as much, in parentheses, because home court advantage is important, at least for some teams in his thoughts, is what he thinks. Going on with the new format going forward. Guys, we'll get to a few of the key dates that the WNBA has published for its 2016 season key dates list. We know that tomorrow is the final roster cut-down date at 2 o'clock Pacific, 5 Eastern. The roster must be down to 12 players, and, of course, Saturday will tip off the season on Saturday with quite a few games across the country. On Saturday, guys, we'll kind of start going team by team. We'll start in the Eastern Conference, and we'll just go through each team for a little bit here. Crystal, we'll start with New York, right out of the box here. The Liberty trying to duplicate a season like they did in 2015 with a 23-11 season, a year after missing the postseason due to tiebreakers with the Chicago Sky last season. A lot of moving pieces in and out of town so far with them. They did bring in Shavante Zellos, re-signed Carolyn Swords, lost Candace Wiggins to retirement, brought in Shoni Schimmel, but also did waive Twin Cash yesterday. Crystal, what are your overall thoughts about New York going into 2016 in your mind? Okay, so apparently we've had some technical problems there, so we'll just switch over to Eric on this one. Eric, we don't mean to put you on the spot here because this was going to be for Crystal, but we'll move on, though, to with you. Go to you, though, with New York again. Eric, give us your thoughts, though, again, on the Liberty going forward for 2016 after, again, a pretty good and impressive turnaround, I think, after what they did last season.
Well, I think it's going to be kind of hard for them to replicate that success because not only they lost, I think, arguably their best player in Epiphany Prince, at least for a little while. They also, other teams are getting better across the conference too. We expect Connecticut to be better. Indiana to at least be as good as they were last season. So it's going to be difficult, I think, for them to lead the league in wins again. I don't think anybody was really expecting that. But I think the New York, you know what you're going to get out of them. You're going to get a lot of defense, a lot of rebounding, tough physical play, especially from their front court, a lot of veterans. The roster does look a little different this season. I think we were all pretty surprised by Swin Cash getting waived the other day. But yeah, I think they should still finish as far as the Eastern Conference goes. Although conferences don't really matter as we said anymore. But I think they should be either like number 3 or 4 in the East probably.
All right, Crystal, let's try this again. The Liberty, again, Crystal, like I said during our draft party show before we had Chassie Melvin join us again, I said, I think it was remarkable, though, of how New York really turned things around from, in pretty much a year's time, again, firing Bill Lambier, rehiring him, and then all the moves they made, and, again, positioned themselves very well, again, finishing 23-11 last season, got to the conference finals last year, before flaming out to Indiana. Crystal, what are your thoughts, though, about the Liberty in 2016? Can they duplicate that 2015 season again this year?
Can they duplicate it? I don't know. Like Eric said, they have different. There's like a different roster. There's a different feel to the team. One of the things that they lacked, well, they're probably going to lack this season is 3-point shooting, which is why they brought in Wnba. And they're hoping Shoni Schimmel can get his shape in enough time to be that, their 3-point threat. But I don't know if they'll honestly get as far as they did. Will they make the playoffs? Probably, but I don't think they'll have a great season like they had last year.
Folks, we will now say hello to Shorty Mama 24, Tanika Stewart up in Los Angeles. Shorty, we hate to put you on the spot, but we'll just do it right now again. New York coming up, and probably, I think, one of the best turnarounds I've seen in quite some time from a team going from, struggling from season to season, getting back in the postseason mix, but again, how they were pretty dominant regular season, and then again had to, battle through a really rugged couple series in the postseason. Shorty, any thoughts about New York for 2016 in your mind, or what are your overall preview and thoughts about the Liberty season?
The Liberty season will definitely be an interesting one to see. I know they do have a lot of new pieces coming in, but they also, still have, their dominant posts and Tina Charles and Kia Stokes and, Carolyn Swartz. So I'm not sure as to if they will duplicate their last season's success, but I do know what, retaining their post players and including adding Wnba into the mix, I think they'll still be one of the top defensive teams out in the entire league. So, it'll be interesting to see, but will they, if they can duplicate their success, I am not sure from last season.
Yeah, and Marquez, I think it's, sometimes it's tough in sports for teams to, either repeat with titles or have, consistent back-to-back, or years of dominance pretty much. Marquez, do you believe, though, that New York, in your mind, is still geared to be a top-tier team like they were last season?
I think they'll make the playoffs for sure, but will they be able to stay towards the top of the conference? That remains to be seen because they have a lot of new pieces, as everyone said, and they have some questions. How will they adjust without Prince, and who's going to be that knockdown three-point shooter that they were missing last year that kind of hurt them towards the end? So I don't expect them to do as well as they did last year because there's so many different pieces and aspects, but they have things to look forward to because, they're going to be looking forward to the growth of Stokes and Boyd. So as many questions as they have, they still have some things to look forward to.
Yeah, so Mike, Marquez saying that there's still some things to look forward to with the Liberty, and again, they did do a little bit of puzzle piece swapping out again, retaining Swords, bringing in Shavonte Zellos, and earlier in the offseason. Of course, Epiphany Prince might be a pretty, maybe a small, strike against the team, perhaps if they're being out for a bit. But Mike, though, what are your overall thoughts about New York coming off last season, going towards 2016?
Well, for them to duplicate their success, as we know that they'll have to repeat their defensive rating, and they led the league in points allowed, 71.1. Fewest points allowed, I should point out. Defensive rating, accordingly, also tops. We mentioned Epiphany Prince, and this is why it's such a big loss. She was 5th in the league in efficiency rating last year, and That's not always hard to, or not always easy to replace, and a lot of questions. Lindsey Harding coming back after a long absence. Is she going to take over at point guard? As we noted, not a lot of perimeter shooting. That's what cost them in the Eastern Conference Finals with Indiana last year. How does Wnba fit into what's a pretty stacked post unit with Charles Kia-Stokes? I think a player to keep an eye on is Brittany Boyd. She was a defensive beast last year and was just really annoying to deal with no matter who she played. If she can parlay what I thought was a pretty strong rookie season and carry that into this season, I think she will be the wild card of this team.
Yeah, Mike, that's just what one of our viewers, DJ in the chat box, has said. NYL equals a lot of youth is what he brings up. So a very good point made there. Shorty, switching gears now to the Chicago Sky, 21-13 last year, 2 games behind the Liberty. Of course, they do have the reigning MVP of the league, Elena Deladon, on their side. Of course, EDD, incredible season for Elena last season. Of course, the free throw, I think what probably intrigues me more is, not only is the 45-point game, but the 97 or 98% free throw percentage. Where so many players that in college or in the pros, either don't work on the free throws or just think that they're not important. Elena Deladon really stresses how important free throws are. I think the big story though for them is can she duplicate, much like the Liberty, can she duplicate an MVP season back to back once more again? Shorty, how about your thoughts though on the 2016 season for the Chicago Sky?
I mean, they're hoping to, build off of the success that they at least had in the regular season. Now, the postseason was a different story as they were the first round exit in the Eastern Conference. But I was just reading numerous interviews from Pokey Chapman, and she just said, the one thing that they do have to build on to have success this season is defense. And I definitely agree with them because, if I'm not mistaken, I think the Chicago Sky were one of the teams that allowed the most points by opponents. So you definitely have to work on their defensive efficiency across the board.
And Crystal, obviously we know about the offensive side, as Short said, though, that defense, I think, is going to have to, probably, bring their A game. And as we've already touched base on about how important games are now with so much momentum riding on them towards later in the year and how one slip up early in the year can really perhaps cost you something bigger down the road. Crystal, what are your thoughts, though, about the Sky's 2016 campaign?
I'm excited. I'm waiting to see, what they bring to the table. I'm waiting to see Imani Boyette come in there and play like I've seen her play before. I'm waiting to see what EDD has done. EDD's put a lot of work in over the summer. I'm just waiting to see how this team's going to operate. I mean, they got close last year, didn't quite do it, so I'm waiting to see if they come out with with more fire underneath them.
All right, Eric, you're the Sky Rider in the Hangout. You know this team a lot better than we do, so what do you have to say about your ball club for 2016?
You need to play better defense. It's plain and simple. Last season was really frustrating, I think, because people obviously losing Sylvia Fowles was not good. It was something. It was really surprising, really frustrating, honestly. But that she's huge defensively, but that shouldn't be a reason for them to go just in a tank defensively. It was kind of embarrassing, honestly, because they lost Indiana at home in Game 3 of the first round, and they gave up a ton of points. I think they gave up over 100. But yeah, they need to play better defense, and also I would say they needed more consistency out of their second and third options on offense, because EDD, she's not going to be able to do it all. You kind of saw last season she was magnificent, obviously offensively, but she kind of tailed off towards the end there, and I think it might have been a little bit of fatigue, maybe a little bit of regressing to the mean, but I would like to see more balanced attack offensively and definitely better defense as well.
So Marquez, as Eric just said, though, okay, so defense is probably the main talking point surrounding Chicago outside of Deladon on the offensive front. Marquez, what do you think, though, Chicago has to do to be successful in 2016?
Yeah, Eric pretty much said what I was going to say about the offensive thing, because, like you said, EDD can't do it all. They're going to need someone to back her up most nights, whether it be Quigley or Cappy or someone else that steps up. They're going to need it. And as everyone else said, defense, they brought in Boyette to be that rim protector that they were kind of missing and they haven't had since Fouls left. So if she's going to be able to step in and play and just she doesn't even have to be that offensive threat as long as she can defend, block, rebound, that's going to be huge for them.
Yeah, it could be huge indeed. And again, Mike, as we said, Chicago last year, again, 21-13. But again, Mike, another early exit for a team that got to the finals a couple in 2014. Had it not have been for Elena Deladon having a back injury, that may have been a longer series perhaps between them and Phoenix. But Mike, what do you believe though has to happen for Chicago to have some success in 2016?
Well, to go off Eric's point, I didn't mind about Sylvia Fowles leaving. I'm kidding. But as we said, defense, they were next to last in points allowed, 78.8. I'm really curious to see how they handled the post, because Sylvia Fowles, leaving Chicago, that's a pretty big gap. Erica De Souza, as well, I don't know what her availability is. We are in an Olympic year, but she plays in some capacity. How will she adjust with a full season under her belt? She had to learn on the fly last year. How does Amani Boyette adjust to that role? Like you said, really it's going to be finding some support to get some pressure off Deladon. And looking at the roster, it kind of tough to say who that might be, but I think the big thing is getting some help down low. Deladon led the team in rebounds last year at 8.4, and that's not to say she can't do it, but if Boyette can come in strong, if we get a little more out of De Souza, maybe even Tamara Young, I think that's going to be a factor to look for with Chicago. They've got a great point guard in Courtney Vandersloot. Cappy Pondexter is a great offensive weapon. So they don't have to have the top-rated defense in the league. They just need to, not give up as many points as Eric alluded to. They gave up exactly 100 in the Game 3 loss to Indiana last year. So rebounding, I think, is going to be their big key.
And Shorties, we switch gears now and go from Chicago to Indiana, who did finish third last year in the Eastern Conference table, 20-14, 3 games out. Got to the Final Four abruptly, losing to Minnesota in 5 really hard-fought games in another instant classic final series for the WNBA. Shorty, we know that there's a lot more riding on this season. We know that we've had Lynn Dunn's final season, then we had the transition period from Lynn Dunn to Stephanie White. Now this year, of course, is the TC24 Legacy Tour, the final year of Tamika Catchings, her illustrious career across Tennessee and through to the Indiana Fever franchise, and has been their cornerstone for so many years, and including their first title in 2012. Shorty, your thoughts though about Indiana's season? Because I know it's going to be riding high on emotion for Tamika, but your overall thoughts though on what they can do to possibly get back to the finals again in 2016.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be one emotional season for the Fever as they get ready to say goodbye to the legendary Tamika Catchings. But I just think coming to the season, there's going to be, so many questions for, the Fever, along with Tamika Catchings, can Shanice Johnson and the likes of Marissa Coleman, can they continue to, build on from last season? How are they going to bring along Tiffany Mitchell? So that's definitely one of the questions there. And also, what are they going to do, with their guard situation? Because if you don't know by now, Brianna January is still recovering from knee surgery that she recently had. So she'll be out for a few games. So those are going to be the following questions coming into the season for the Fever.
Yeah, so a couple question marks there. Again, Crystal, there's so much riding on this year with, again, with the Fever, once more, Tamika Catchings having her, farewell/legacy tour again across the whole season this year again for Catch. Crystal, what other maybe than Catch's final season, what other storylines, though, do you have in mind for Indiana's 2016 season?
To see if they'll ever get back to the promised land, to see if Catchings will get that ring before she retires, and overall just see how this new team is made up of. They just got Devro Peters, so we'll see how much that'll help them down low, and I think I just want to see what Stephanie White's going to do to the team this year.
Yeah, so there's that there. So Eric, Sally, I think you know this team way too well as well, like Chicago, because it always seems to have been Fever Sky in the playoffs again, and I know that you've been at many of those playoff games. Eric, as you look forward towards 2016 with the Fever, of course, with Catch's final season, what other players or other storylines, though, are you keeping your eyes on, though, for 2016 for Indy?
I would say, yeah, definitely Devereaux Peters coming because Notre Dame in the area, so I think they'll greatly appreciate having her, especially because admittedly Chanwa is Canadian and they're going to be missing a lot of games this year, I think. Also, definitely, Shanice Johnson had a most improved worthy campaign last year, although she didn't win it. So I want to see if she can repeat that sort of success, because when you look at the Fever, it's not just about Tamika Catchings anymore. They did a good job of reloading in anticipation for Catchings retiring. So once she does retire, next year they'll have some good pieces still. They have an excellent coach in Steph White. So I think this year will be about continuing to develop those players. And Tiffany Mitchell, I think, is a great fit for them as well. So I want to see how she does in her first year.
So Marquez, we've heard about Steph White as head coach again. I kind of thought it would be a little bit of a rough transition from Lynn Dunn to Steph White last year. We kind of saw, though, too, with Catch dealing with that back problem for a bit, and then she came back strong. And that Steph White, a coach that I believe if I was playing, I would want to play for. She's so calm, cool, collected, and has patience towards players, but also can get fired up in a big situation. Marquez, your storylines and what are you monitoring for Indiana for 2016?
Definitely Tiffany Mitchell, because out of their camp, they've been giving her really high praise. So I'm interested to see how she's going to come along for them during the season. And as Crystal said, they brought in Peters, and I think her mixed in with who they already have down low is going to be a lot of problems for a lot of people. So I'm interested to see that and how far Tamika can carry them this year, because I know as this is her last year, she's going to be wanting that last ring, that last hurrah for her. So those are my stories for them this year.
Mike, our other correspondent, Reagan Patrick, who can make it tonight, she put a rule down in here that no one in the live hangout can hate or despise Tamika Catchings. Mike, before we get to your thoughts about the Fever, can you kind of take us back to that final game in 2012? Obviously, there's no denying that TC is a fan favorite amongst, I believe, everybody in the Wnba, of her story, being, with her hearing impairment, but also, of what she's meant to this league. Mike, can you kind of talk about the 2012 finals when Minnesota played Indiana in that, great series?
Wow. Well, I covered that series, and Indiana, I'd say, was the fresher team in that series. Minnesota had a lot of Olympians, and I think Cheryl Reeve underestimated the effect it would have on stamina. But it wasn't just Tamika Catchings. Shavante Zealous, big loss for them. She had a huge playoff series that year. And Erin Phillips, who's been a Lynx killer, she was running behind the three-point line. So you had a lot of pieces that really no one had heard of outside of Tamika Catchings, and don't forget Elena Larkins. She had a breakout year as well in that playoff series, and you had Larkins going up against Taj McWilliams Franklin, and age I think caught up to her at that point, and then just not being ready to handle the likes of Phillips or Zealous or these folks that you haven't really heard too much about. So they're difficult to scout if you haven't seen evidence of what they can do. But yeah, it was a great moment for Indiana, and it got Lynn Dunn her first and only title, and was a nice piece or a nice highlight to her career, as you mentioned, Tamika Catchings being the sentimental favorite. If anybody hates on her, you clearly are not a fan of this league. That's all I have to say about that. But 2012, it was that kind of how the Fever do things. They always seem to sneak in there. They've done it very well, and they have a very good system in place. They have a lot of support there, and needless to say, I think they could be a sleeper in 2016.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people have them as a sleeper, I think, so I'd agree with that one. Shorty, going back now to the other qualifying team in last year's postseason, the Washington Mystics, and I've said that Mike Tebow, over and over again, I've said has been like the king of consistency, with not really a lot of star talent on his roster, but always seems to be consistent, winning games and getting in the postseason the past couple years. Shorty, now that, with a lot of new, of course, with the format change and the playoff format change, Shorty, what do you think is going to have to be different for the Mystics in 2016 for them to get back in the postseason?
I would say one of the things would have to be consistency. I know that they're not really a different roster. They pretty much have the same pieces all coming back. I think Taylor Hill was kind of slowly filling her way back in, just coming back from pregnancy, but I think she'll have a much improved season this year. I think the same with Tiana Hawkins as well. And oh man, Ema Misamin, definitely had a much improved year, and I look forward to her continuing to do more things this season, along with Stephanie Dolson and the likes of Bria Hartley. But I think one of the big storylines coming in for the Mystics would be, Ivory Lotta, who will be out for, I'd say, 4 to 6 weeks, coming back from a knee injury as well. So they'll definitely be interesting to see for the Mystics.
Crystal, Washington, like we said, they don't really have like that superstar player, but Mike Tebow always seems to push the right buttons. Now, I think that he has a rising star in Emma Mieseman right now in red, white, and blue right now back there in our nation's capital. Crystal, what do you believe, though, has to happen for the Mystics to get back in the postseason with this new format now in 2016 in your mind?
I mean, I think they'll get back either way. Like you said, Mike Tebow's a really good coach. He develops his players very well. Like you said, Emma Simmons is an up-and-coming star. I think that was a very good pick on his behalf. I think she was kind of under the radar. Not many people knew about her, and he kind of just he found pretty much, as they would say, the needle in the haystack with that one. So I think they're going to make the playoffs again. I think they're going to have a pretty good season. Will they go far? I mean, it's too early to tell. We have to see how they play in, the first couple of weeks to really determine. But I'm expecting them to go back to the playoffs.
And Eric, if we started a Mike Tebow fan club, you'd be the first guy to sign up for it and be president and vice president and CEO of the whole thing, because we know how much you love Mike Tebow. But Eric, it's all for the right reason, though, because Mike, like I've said, has always seemed to put or push the right buttons, either with international scouting or drafting players to fit his mold and system. So, Eric, what do you think Mike has to do, though, to push those right buttons again and get that team back in the postseason for 2016?
Well, it's interesting because they're kind of in a bad spot to start the season because Ivory Latta is going to be out for a few weeks because of meniscus operation, and Carol Lawson is all but retired. So that's pretty much your starting backcourt that isn't coming back. And not only that, but it's your two best three-point shooters who aren't coming back, or who aren't going to be there immediately, at least in Lotta's case. So they've got a lot of work to do offensively. I don't think they were a great offensive team last year, but this year it's going to be a struggle because suddenly they don't really have much depth. So you're going to need players like Taylor Hill to step up. Bria Hartley's going to need to step up. Natasha Cloud's probably going to have to score a little bit more at the point guard position. But as long as they have the front court, because Emma Mieseman and Stephanie Dolson are growing fast, man. That's going to be huge for them, especially moving forward. No pun intended. So hold the applause.
Hashtag rim shot.
I'll be here all night. No, but I think it is a problem for them that they're not going to have much offense because when you have a front court dominated offense like that, it's easier to guard against. But once Lotta comes back, I think they're going to be a threat. And also I love Kalia Copper. I love that pick. She's more versatile than people think, I believe. So expect a lot of ball handling from their wings, I would say, like TRP and Taylor Hill, and just excellent defense. I wouldn't be surprised if they're the best defense in the league this year.
So, Marquez, Eric's brought up the term step up for a lot of these young kids that are either coming back from injury or, probably had some down seasons last year. Marquez, in your mind, how important, though, is it, though, for these younger kids to step up, though, for the season to make up for the absence of Lotta and Lawson in 2016 in your mind?
Oh, yeah, definitely. They're going to need three-point shooting. So you're gonna have to have someone like Malat who's fully more than capable of hitting those to step up, and Hartley is gonna have to come back and just come back as strong as she was when she came in, because they're gonna really need people out there to make plays. Because you can't depend on Dolson and Emma as much, even though they're a good 1-2 punch. You're gonna need people from outside to open things up for them, but other than that, their defense is going to be really good. Copper is good. They're going to be a good team. I think they may struggle a little bit at first once they're trying to figure things out, but once they get everything back and everyone back together, they'll be fine.
So, Mike, again, we've heard about stepping up with players. We've had some talk about the injuries and potential retirement of Kara Lawson. Mike, what other storylines, though, do you believe, though, is on your mind for Washington for 2016?
Well, I mean, we've been talking about getting some help for the front court. But I want to see how does Emma Miesemann continue her performance. She was second in the league in field goal percentage last year, and this might be an opportunity for her. Something to keep an eye on, and this has been Washington's mantra since Tebow came in, is their pace. They are not a very fast team, and if they're going to beat you, it's because they're going to try to milk the clock as much as they can. They were second to last in overall pace a year ago, and they're not known, again, for scoring a lot of points, but going off Eric's point, their defense, they were actually close to the Liberty in terms of fewest points allowed. How they accomplish that this year could be tricky. I think for them, as we said, it's developing the youth, what to do about the offense, and do they change the tempo a bit because you don't have as much experience available to you right now. But if Miesemann can really step things up, as we noted, I really like to see what she can do this year. This is a team that will probably make the playoffs, and Mike Tebow, I'd say if he'd be the money ball of the WNBA. There's no one that really jumps out at me, but I'm sure there's going to be at least one or two Mystics players that make a fool out of all of us. And that's not to say we don't scout this league, but they have a way of surprising you, and I think this will be another example.
Yeah, they're normally a surprising team, so we'll take your word for that. Shorty, going now to the two teams that were outsiders looking in on the postseason party in the Eastern Conference last year. First off is Atlanta last year. Both Connecticut and Atlanta tied at 15-19 last season at a 441 win percentage. Shorty, there's been a lot of, I don't know if it's like chaos, but a lot of roster turnover, I believe, in ATL right now. Of course, Angel McCoughtry being back, of course, didn't play in a lot of the preseason games. Tiffany Hayes has played a lot. Mattia Ajivon, the journeywoman, still trying to, get herself back to full strength, and of course, as well with the trade of Shoni Schimmel. Shorty, I know there's a lot of, more so about the roster turnover being the big storyline, but what else in your mind is a talking point with ATL this year in 2016?
Yeah, we talk about roster turnover. I just say overall, they'll definitely be an interesting club to see. I mean, they always will, have Miss Dependable in Angel McCoughtry, and also the continuously improved Tiffany Hayes as well. And then there's the thing with Sancho Little and supposed Olympic commitments that will be coming up, whether she misses a few games or not. But it's just the thing is the guard situation for ATL. I mean, it's just like they're never sure, what they're going to be doing with the guard situation. I know they just brought in Laisha Clarendon, but I just think ultimately this season they'll be doing a lot of PG by committee because, that situation, the guard situation over there is just, it isn't complete. But I know that they, have brought in a lot of guards. I definitely am interested in seeing what Bria Holmes will do this season. Also, quickly, I'm just happy that Megan Simmons finally got a spot in the league somewhere, and happy that it was with ATL.
So, Crystal, again, we know about all the turnover with the roster again, trades being made, players getting cut over there with Atlanta and Michael Cooper and his system and what he wants to do with the Dream this season. Crystal, what storylines, though, are you most keeping your eyes on with the Dream this season?
I don't know. I mean, there's not really storylines from Atlanta that really making me really want to watch them. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that one's not really a storyline for me. I guess to see how well they'll do, because I don't think they're making the playoffs. So I guess just overall to see how well they'll do in this season altogether.
Yeah, and Eric, and I think the main talking point, though, other than the trades and the roster influx, I think, though, and I believe Shorty hit it right on the head, though, was again Megan Simmons finally getting a chance to prove herself worthy in the WNBA after getting cut off the rosters in New York and in Seattle. just last season. But again, there was so much roster turnover and so much chaos and nonsense going on with the Dream. Where are your expectations, or what are your expectations for ATL in 2016?
Yeah, nonsense is an excellent word for it because I don't really understand many of the moves they make. I'll just give you an example. Like during the 2016 draft, it's pretty clear they needed a point guard, right? So they wait until the third round to draft Nia Johnson. Then they end up cutting her, and they pick up Jordan Jones off waivers from Chicago, who they could have drafted before Nia Johnson, and then they waive her anyway. It's like it doesn't make any sense some of the things they do. But Atlanta's it's going to be an interesting team because they're very wing heavy, especially considering their shot creation. Because they don't really have any point guards who are going to be able to create shots. But you look at Tiff Hayes, Angel McCautry, and Brio Holmes, who is a terrific passer for a wing player. Most of your shot creation is going to come from the 2 and 3 positions, and then the post. Obviously, there's not going to be a lot happening there unless Elizabeth Williams steps it up. So I think it's a very weird balance for them. I agree with Crystal. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but I think they're in a good spot moving forward just because of all the assets they have. So we'll see if Cooper can bring them along.
And Marquez, I didn't realize that I had guessed the word of the day with it being nonsense about the Atlanta roster, but I believe it's true though. Just with all the the machinations and moves that they've made, either cutting players or getting a player off waivers that they could have drafted, as Eric alluded to. Marquez, what are your expectations, I guess, for this Atlanta ball club in 2016, if there are any?
I don't have them in the playoffs because it's just what point guard for them has been a revolving door for the last couple seasons, whether it was Dumerc or Logic or them trying out Ajabon there. And this year, I still don't think they've found the answer quite yet. So I think that is going to be a spot for them that's going to maybe present some problems because, they're going to have to do it by committee. But I would hope that they improve a little bit based off of last year, but anything major, I don't see it happening for them this year yet.
And Mike, it's kind of, the championship hangover almost. Atlanta goes to 2 finals and gets absolutely plastered by the bigger and better team in Minnesota in those 2 series. And I think that those 2 chances or those 2 blown opportunities for them to win the title, I think, was kind of maybe sort of a small little decline in what we've seen from Atlanta recently. Mike, any thoughts or, overall take, I guess, on Atlanta for 2016?
Well, uncertainty would be my first word, and in case you're not aware of this, Demirs Dantas has said she was going to take this year off to deal with some family emergencies. Apparently her uncle has been suffering some strokes, so that's a developing post player that you could have had that is not available. This is a team that leads the league in steals on a regular basis. Then they're very good at swiping the ball and getting in passing lanes and just wreaking havoc. The issue is just about everything else. They led the league in turnovers last year, and when you can't hang on to the ball, bad things happen, and as a result, they gave up a lot of points. They had the worst defense of any team last year, 79.8. You're probably going to revolve around Angel McCautry again. She's led the league in usage percentage, I think, 3 of the last 4 years, and the one time she didn't, Maya Moore had to carry a banged-up Lynx team. And with all this turnover, that doesn't bode well for ball security. And going back to last year with the whole point guard issue, they drafted Samantha Logic, misplayed her at the wing, and she's not on a team as I understand it. So it's just a team that really needs to figure out what are they doing and get maybe a little more traditional set. Get a point guard, get someone who can handle the ball, and use that as the building block. Because right now, I just don't see how this team is going to have any chemistry throughout the year.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, some of those, roster influx we already brought up again. It's been a big talking point. Then, Shorty, the pretty intriguing Connecticut Sun. New head coach, new players in there, a new system in place, and so far it's been looking pretty good for the preseason. But, Shorty, we saw what happened to this team, though, sadly, last year. A great start. Injury bug comes out of nowhere and just, takes everybody off their feet pretty much with the roster there with Connecticut. So, Shorty, a new chapter for the Sun. Kurt Miller now the head coach, and as we said, and we'll get to this with Erica pretty soon, that we'll get to with the three-point shooting for Connecticut. But Shorty, they're a team that I believe is pretty intriguing. But what do you think, though, about CT going forward in 2016?
I definitely think they will be a much more improved team. I actually think they might possibly make the playoffs this season, without the injury bug hitting them. But I think they just have a lot of good pieces, starting with the coach, Kurt Miller coming in, wanting to bring in his improved system of the team, shooting a lot of threes. So, hopefully he'll get that going. You have Alex Bentley, still have Jasmine Thomas, you know, on the perimeter, and then you still have the most improved player of the year in Kelsey Bone, and they're also going to bring back one of their top players in Wnba. So it'll definitely be a fun season out there in Connecticut, and hopefully they can make the playoff this year without any injury hitting them throughout the season.
And Crystal, that's my big talking point with the Sun is health is a priority. If this team is healthy, they could be scary. If they're not healthy, it could be another year of them, maybe not making the postseason again. But Crystal, with the new coach and new players in place with the Sun, what are your thoughts about their 2016 campaign? All right, so again, Crystal having some small technical problems there. So Eric, what we're going to get to with you is we had talked about this briefly during the preseason games was if they don't shoot 20 or more threes in the game or attempt 20 or more threes, then there's a problem there because I think Kurt Miller is going to be a coach that will probably live and die by the three. But Eric, as we said, though, new coach, new players in place, help is a big component in my opinion. But what about you in 2016 for CT?
Yeah, this is probably the team I'm looking forward to most, besides my own, of course. But because Kurt Miller, he's so forward-thinking in his basketball offense. They're going to run a lot of pick and roll, as I'm sure you guys have heard 1,000 times already. A lot of pick and roll, a lot of threes. But what makes it interesting is that you look at the roster and it's like, well, yeah, they're going to shoot a lot of threes, but who's going to be making all these threes? They drafted Rachel Banham, who's an excellent shooter. Shakina Strickland has turned herself into an excellent shooter. But apart from that, you don't really have, like, especially in the front court, which is what interests me is that you got Morgan Tuck and Jonquil Jones, you could both kind of probably classify as stretch fours. Camille Little can play that role as well, but who's going to be getting those minutes? It's kind of like trying to fit it's kind of like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, because they're not really going to have those sort of assets right away. But I think those players, when they develop and they get young experience, a lot of experience and everything, it's going to be a really successful franchise again. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to what they do in year one. I think they could surprise some people.
All right, Crystal, Travis, again, what about your thoughts for Connecticut going forward in 2016? Okay, so we'll try that again later on. We'll just skip over and come back to it at a later time and date, probably. Marquez, how about you, though? Again, as we said, Kurt Miller is, Eric alluded to, again, bringing that news, bringing a breath of fresh air to the Sun for 2016. What about your thoughts about them going forward for this upcoming season?
Well, for one, they're going to have a really, really up-tempo, exciting offense because they want to get up as many shots as possible. But like Eric said, you kind of wonder who's going to be taking all of those shots because, you saw in the preseason, you saw Kelsey Bone taking threes, but I don't think that's something that they should be doing every game, all game. And the way they're going to distribute minutes, because, they have a lot of people that play the same thing, as in Tuck and Jones. And I want to see how Alyssa Thomas is gonna be used in this offense, because, as we know, her jumper isn't the best, and she's not known for her three-point capabilities. So I'd like to see how they're going to involve her. But other than that, I think they're going to be a really big surprise for some people, and I honestly think they have a really good shot at making playoffs.
Yeah, I think that they have a good shot as well going forward. And again, Mike, like I said, though, I think more than anything else, again, health is going to be their big, concern or big, talking point of thing is if this team is healthy. Like I said, if they're healthy, they could be a very scary team. If not, then they may be as it was last season. But Mike, what do you think though about the Sun going forward with their longevity in 2016?
Well, you get Shanae Gumake back, so that's a very good start. A couple things to keep an eye on as I was looking at their stats. We talked about pace. Their pace was 73.2, which was tied for 9th last year along with Phoenix. So Kurt Miller's going to speed things up, that's going to put a little more pressure on teams that to play fast. Something else to keep an eye on is rebounds. They were the second worst rebounding team a year ago. Are they going to get someone to help scoop up the boards there? Like you said, who's going to take all those shots? Really, I think they have a lot of options to do that. Don't count out Alex Bentley. She had 15 points per game last year, and this is a team that, remember, they won their first, I think, 7 games, and then things kind of fell off. So they were able to get a strong start without Shanae. Now that she's here, new system, reports are saying the players are really have bought into it. This could be a team that, well, I wanted to say watch for in the East, but we don't have the East anymore. But I've got a good, I'm going to say more likely than not Connecticut makes the playoffs. Obviously, health's going to be the thing, but there's a lot to like from this team, and I think it's just rebounding pace, just cleaning up a couple of areas. This team could make some waves.
Yeah. So I think health is going to be one thing as we touched base on. Going out west, guys, of course, the first team, of course, the defending WNBA champs, the Minnesota Lynx, coming off of a 22-12 season last year. And now with them having their big 4 back in place, you can pretty much say, Shorty, we saw how dominant Minnesota has been as of late. I think ever since 2010, 2011, that they've been, the talking point, cream of the crop of the West, and also of the entire league. Shorty, what are your aspirations and thoughts about Minnesota for 2016?
I definitely think they're going to be, one of the top teams in the WNBA. They would be on track to go to the WNBA finals again, but will they win that championship? I'm not sure about that. I mean, I hate to break it to you, but in this league, it is hard to repeat. So even though the Lynx are capable, I definitely won't give them the, heads up to do that. But, I say, they still look pretty good. And also they're bringing in even more firepower, bringing in Janelle McCarville as well. And, drafting some rookies who probably won't get much playing time because they'll be all about the vets. But I think, they'll definitely still be on track. Maya Moore be looking to have a dominant season. So, and also with 4 of their starters heading off to the Olympics in Rio this summer. So they'll definitely be an interesting team to see. But will they win the finals again? I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, and Crystal, I think, though, that Shorty's right, though. I mean, it's tough in any sport, regardless of what it is, to repeat, win 3 in a row, win 4 in a row, what have you. But like Shorty said, I mean, Minnesota's more than capable of winning this, winning this bad boy again, back-to-back years again. But Crystal, what are your thoughts, though, about Minnesota for 2016? What do you think and why? Okay, this is just. Crystal is having like monumental problems, so we'll try that again. Crystal, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Yeah, a little sketchy still. So
me? Am I frozen?
Yeah, you're stuck frozen right now. So we'll come back to you again. Try to get back to you sometime soon. But again, so Eric again. Minnesota, as we said, and like I just brought up though too again, it's very tough to repeat in any league, any sport. And like Shuri said though, I mean, they're more than capable of doing it, Eric. But now it's a matter of them actually doing the repeating again as the champs. But again, Eric, your thoughts still about Minnesota for 2016?
I think that, well, let's see. I think Minnesota, as long as they have Maya Moore, they're going to be in the thick of things. Like, because she's arguably the best player in the league, if not like top 3. So when you have that kind of talent, it's going to be hard to lose many games, honestly. But people say they're getting old and stuff. Yeah, that's true. However, pertaining just to 2016, I think if they stay healthy, they're going to be once again like a top 3 team because Sylvia Fowles is going to be a terrific help to them basically for the entire season because you got a full season of great rim protection, great pick and roll defense, instant double team demanding in the post. So that'll be a big help to them. If they can get Waylon back to what she was, because last year she was dealing with a lot of injury problems, if I recall correctly. And having Gia Perkins, that's going to help a lot off the bench because they really haven't had that real sixth woman role. So if she's kind of getting up there too, but if she can just give them like one more season of good old Gia ball, then I think they're going to be set.
All right, Crystal, we'll try this again. It looks like you went from your computer to your phone. Give us your thoughts about Minnesota going forward in 2016. Well, we can see you, but now we can't hear you. So
I believe every word she said.
Yeah, we didn't hear a single thing that was said right there.
I'm going to believe every
Marquez,
word.
how about we go to you real quick? Again, the links, like we've already touched base on, they can very easily, again, repeat. But, again, it's really tough, of course, though, to repeat in this league, and it has not been done since the 01-02 seasons when Los Angeles did it against Charlotte and New York. But, again, Marquez, like I said, though, they're more than capable of doing it. But what do you think, though, about the links in 2016?
They're gonna be a top team, and it's gonna be a big boost for them if Waylon and Simone come back healthy. Because I mean, they were beat up towards the end, and they were fortunate enough to have big clutch performances at the end by people that you may not have expected, like Montgomery. But I think with a full season of everyone being healthy, they're gonna be good. But I don't think they'll repeat because I mean, you have Phoenix back with everyone, and they're obviously gonna be one of their biggest competitors this year. So as a repeating, I don't know, but they'll still be a big contender.
Okay, Crystal, we will try this again. Give us your thoughts about Minnesota for 2016.
Nope.
It's still not working. They don't want you to talk about Minnesota, so apparently you're just...
Well, there's her last year she got sick of them winning.
Oh, there you go. Exactly. And Mike, as we do go to you, I mean, because you're around this, I mean, you've been around this team for quite some time. You've been there for all three championship victories in some capacity. You've been there, and I think, though, that much like Connecticut, though, health will be their big thing, though, I think, with Waylon and Augustus trying to come back to full strength. And still, though, I mean, if you can if you can have a series with Sylvia Fowles like that again this season, like it was last year with how she just took over and the pain after coming over. I mean, that's going to be a really big role. Plus, Janelle McCarville to back her up, that's a very scary post. Two-headed monster in the post, clogging those lanes down there. But, Mike, what's your thoughts, though, about your hometown ball club?
Minnesota, well, one loss of theirs, no on a cruise due to the Olympics, and I believe that's how Gia Perkins came into play. As we noted, this is a very quote-unquote old team. And on top of the four Olympians, don't forget their coach is also going to be part of that Olympic run. Cheryl is an assistant for USA Basketball, so that's going to be a huge X factor is how does Cheryl manage her players, because we all want to see them win gold, of course, but if they come up short in the playoffs, there's some folks who are wondering, is this going to end? Are we sensing an apocalypse here? And when you win so many titles, you start thinking about how this could all unravel. But bringing back McCarville is going to help, not just because of her experience. Your turnovers are probably going to be cut down a bit, and they weren't a terrible team with that last year, but McCarville being that great passer out of the post, backing up Fowles, that gives them a great option to work with. Montgomery is there. She's more comfortable. Fowles has had a full training camp. There's a lot to like about this team. I mean, yeah, they've been around for a while, but this is the team that knows how to get it done. Cheryl has a very strong system in place. I guess the usual suspects in the case of Minnesota would be the three-point defense. They're not necessarily as strong in that area. And, what happens, like I said, with health, as folks have noted, Waylon took the winter off to recover. She had a pretty banged-up ankle from the finals. And I know a lot of focus this year is getting Maya Moore's efficiency back up. She had a career low, I think it was 42% field goal shooting. They want to get her up to 50, and how easy that's going to be, we don't know. But if the Lynx are healthy, that could open some things up for Maya in particular. And as far as them repeating, they've tried it twice. They've come up short twice. They'll try it again. We'll see what happens, but I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do. They should be in the thick of it. but there's a lot of teams that are ready to knock them off. So they're going to take this very procedurally.
It's going to be it's a marathon, not a sprint to the finish line, as we always talk about. Okay, let's just try this. Crystal, can you say something for us real quick? She can't even do that. She's still frozen. Okay, so we're just going to check back with her later on. Shorty, the next team that finished right behind Minnesota, of course, is the Phoenix Mercury, one of the 3 teams, by the way, folks, that will be celebrating their 20th anniversary season this year. We'll get to that momentarily after we get done with these little previews here. So, Shorty, with Phoenix being back to full strength, Rossi, Taylor, both back as well, fully loaded, ready to get back on track. Shorty, it may be it may be another 2-horse race between the Lynx and Mercury again this year, like it's been the past few seasons. But what do you think, though, about Phoenix being back to full strength, more importantly, for 2016?
Oh my goodness, Phoenix being back to full strength, definitely be scary for the WNBA. Personally, they're my pick for WNBA champions, but still, that is all remain to be seen. But yes, they definitely have their top players back. Not only just the best in the league, but I'd say in the world. In Diana Taurasi, bringing her back, is definitely a big push for Phoenix. Have Penny Taylor back, so definitely looking forward to see, what they could do, with all of their pieces, being back. And of course, I'm definitely interested in seeing what rookie Courtney Williams will be doing for the Mercury this season. I'm not sure whether she'll be getting much playing time at all, but still, for whatever she get on the floor, definitely be interesting. I know they picked up Julian Eileen in the draft, and I know she won't be playing this year, but I know they have another returning player coming back in Isabel Harris. So definitely want to see what she can do in her first season. But overall, I mean, hey, they said they are out for redemption. So definitely be a lot of big storylines coming out of Phoenix this season.
All right, we will try this again. Crystal, can you please say something for us?
Can you hear me?
Hey, finally! It only took us like 4 teams to get you back on air. Yes, praise hands emoji. Crystal, Phoenix, like we said, they are, like Short said, I mean, they're out for redemption this season. But again, with them being fully back to full strength, I think, that's like the big marquee talking point with this Mercury team again, with them having all of their puzzle pieces back in the puzzle and in the mix this year. Crystal, what are your thoughts, though, about Phoenix going forward for 2016?
Okay, first, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm so paranoid. So the question was, what do I think about how do I think Mercury's going to do this year? Was that the question? I think the Mercury are going to actually be a really scary team. I think they possibly will win the championship this year. I think they can go far. I think they're actually going to be a team that many of us are going to have to worry about. They're getting DT back. They're getting Penny back. They're getting half of their core back. So I think they're actually going to be a really scary team. I'm more worried about them than Minnesota. Yeah, I said it. And watch out, But sorry, Mike. No. But
I'll get to my point in a moment. I should say I'll counter in a moment.
Oh God.
Minnesota. I just really want to see someone different. But I think they're going to be a scary team.
No, perhaps. So again, Eric, like we've already said, again, Taurasi and Taylor being back is a pretty big deal. But by the way, I want to direct a comment to Crystal from Corey in the chat box, who says we need to take lip reading classes here in regards to Crystal having her technical faults tonight. But Eric, what are the big storylines though outside of Taurasi and Taylor that you're monitoring for Phoenix's 2016 campaign?
Can I just yield my time on the floor to Mike right away because I want to hear I have a little showdown here. Okay, so I'll make this quick. There is no bigger acquisition in the offseason than Diana Taurasi. Just say that they traded for her or something. But yeah, a healthy rest of Taurasi and Penny Taylor as well. That's going to be huge. Once again, they're getting up there in age, but they took off last year's WNBA season. That means a lot as far as longevity goes. And I think their depth is going to be even better this season because Courtney Williams drafted, and as Shorty said, Isabel Harrison. So that's basically 2 first-round picks they're getting this season. So yeah, Brittany Griner is going to have a real backup this year. They're going to have a real scorer coming off their bench. It's going to be pretty hard to stop this team.
So Marquez, again, we've heard about, if you can get a player of the caliber of Diana Taurasi back without having to make a roster transaction either, via trade or whatnot, like Eric said, that's a really big boost to a team. Marquez, though, what are you watching, though, with this Mercury Club in 2016?
Well, they're a deep team. They're bringing everyone back. They are bringing in Izzy Harrison and Courtney Williams, who, like Eric said, they're tremendous talents. They're going to make a difference when they're on the floor. And then when you look at their bench, you've got someone like a Misty Bass that can come in and be scrappy and fight for extra possessions. And then Brittany and Candace, Dupree, and it's just so much to go over that they're probably one of the scariest teams in the league. And everyone should be worried for them. To me, they're probably going to win the championship if I have to pick today. And it's just because Diana Penny is just so much that they have that they can do. It's really hard to. It's going to be hard to keep up.
So, Mike, you're going to have a barn burner on your hands on Saturday at Target Center in Minneapolis. I expect that scoreboard to have to replace some bulbs, I think, in that once this game's over with. But, Mike, though, obviously, that Phoenix will be in the rearview mirror of Minnesota probably all season, more than likely in the standings or whatnot, perhaps, who knows. But, Mike, overall thoughts, though, about Phoenix coming in, though, on Saturday to take on the Lynx again on opening day and also on ESPN.
Yeah, that's my first conspiracy theory of 2016 is that the WNBA was somehow planning to have these two teams meet up to start the season. As far as the scoreboard goes, Target Center is going to upgrade it, so if we do break the scoreboard, actually it'll be coming in after the Olympic break, so the video board should be able to handle it. Things for Phoenix, and you've got two great players back, DT, Penny Taylor. I mean, the starting five, I actually would go up against Minnesota starting five, and if you would put those two together, it would be a wash, if you ask me. If you don't go for Minnesota, Phoenix would be pretty good. The key for me is going to be their backups because, Brittany Griner, the best shot blocker in this league, she'll probably run away with that category again, but when you had folks like Bass, is Harrison going to come in? I mean, there was a drop-off, so, how do you spell for Griner, and also how do you spell for her when she's the focus of opposing teams, because in last year's playoff series, Fowles was able to handle Griner one-on-one, and that allowed Rebecca Brunson to do what she wanted on the boards, and that's something that didn't happen 2 years ago when Griner blew up McCarville. Well, now they're both there. The starters I like for Phoenix, the backups, and they still have some cuts to make before the rosters are finalized tomorrow. That's going to be the determinant, or I should say the key influence as to how far Phoenix goes, but they are a pretty safe bet to make the finals with this new format, and I think there are a lot of folks that would say if we don't get Minnesota and Phoenix in the finals, it might be a bit disappointing. There's a lot to look forward to, and one last point about DT, in addition to just what she brings on the stat sheet, some friends of mine who covered Phoenix said she's also the glue that holds that team together. She is the bastion of leadership. You have her back, and you saw 2 years ago how she made everyone else better. Well, now she's going to make everyone else better again, and I guess if there's one casualty, it's we only get 3 meetings between Minnesota and Phoenix before the playoffs, and all before June 7th, so enjoy it while you can, and hopefully they'll see each other in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that it's a pretty big casualty that we're taking. It's a pretty big, whatever you want, kick to the groin, I guess, if you want to say that, I guess, or knee to the gut, perhaps. That the fact that we only get to see them three times that they'll play each other, and all that before June 7th this season. So, Shorty, moving out from the Mercury now to the Tulsa Shock, now the Dallas Wings, of course, this year, new era being ushered in WNBA history. This is the first time that a team has relocated or folded since Sacramento folded in 2009 and when the Shock first moved to Tulsa in 2010. And by the way, folks, they are also the only franchise currently to move twice in their franchise history. But Shorty, there is, this is a new era though for this, Tulsa now Dallas franchise. Of course, the big story though is Skylar Diggins being fully healthy though after her, pretty catastrophic injury last season that saw the shock, the when Tulsa was derailed off of, a really good run. They did get into the postseason last year, but were ultimately swept in 2 games by Phoenix last year. But Shorty, I've said, many times that they are a very intriguing team, though, in the Western Conference with a lot of the puzzle pieces. And I said, also said, though, that they're a really good mixture of, like, vets and young leaders, though, and young talent coming up. Shorty, your thoughts, though, about the inaugural year of basketball for the Dallas Wings in 2016?
Yes, the question will be for Dallas is not if they make the playoffs, but how far would they, go in the playoffs this year? Because I mean, they were still pretty dominant without Skylar Diggins. So just to finally bring her back into the season, I mean, definitely would be an extra boost for the Dallas Wings. So you have Skylar back along with Odyssey Sims, and with the addition of Aaron Phillips in that big trade from LA that I'm still ticked off about, but that's another case in itself. But I mean, it'll definitely, be interesting to see. Will Courtney Paris continue to have, the dominant season that she had? I know she led the league in rebounding last year, so we'll definitely see what she does with that. And also, I definitely am just really intrigued to see the development of Aerial Powers. I know that she did perform, very good in the preseason, scored 17 points in one of their preseason games. So definitely, interested to see her, and along with the new addition of Ruth Hamlin as well. So, with those 2 rookies coming in with their mix as you said, young and old and veteran players, again, the question is not if they will make the playoffs, but how far can they get in the playoffs? And I definitely think they, at least, if not get to the second round, most likely push a series, depending on who they match up against, to a game 3.
So, Crystal, we know that the Mercury and Lynx at one point recently gave you nightmares. Now you're saying that Dallas is the team that's going to give you nightmares now whenever anyone plays them now. Because, like I said, though, they're a team that really has intrigued me with their core roster formation, basically. And, again, having Skylar back fully healthy is a really big bonus for them, too, in this really big inaugural year, alongside Odyssey Sims and along with all the younger talent that they do have with their roster going forward. Crystal, your thoughts, though, about the Wings' inaugural year in Dallas in 2016?
Can you hear me again?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I'm paranoid. Sorry. I think I think Dallas is actually going to be a really good team. I thought they were going to be good last year. If Skylar didn't go down with that injury, I do think that their playoff series with Phoenix would have been a little bit different. I still think Phoenix would have won, but I think it would have been more of a competitive playoff game. I don't know if Dallas is gonna give me nightmares yet. The team for the last couple of years has been Minnesota. Like, I would go to sleep and I'd have nightmares, and then I'd wake up. But I don't think Dallas is quite on that level yet. But I think they are gonna be on that level. They are gonna be a team that is a force on the West, and they just might make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, and Eric, and like we've touched base on many times about the new format, with it being, wide open to everybody. I think that Dallas could be a team that, gets in there somewhere as a, play-in game somewhere along the lines. And again, with them having so much, again, with those vet leaders along with some of the young talent going forward. Eric, what are your thoughts, though, about Dallas and their inaugural campaign in 2016 down there in the Dallas-Fort Worth area?
It's going to be very exciting. I think they're going to be a very dynamic team. People keep saying Skylar coming back. Yes, definitely. Big deal. Also, Chloe coming back after she comes back from her 7-game suspension, of course. But they just have so many exciting young players, so many options on offense. I think Aaron Phillips was a great fit for them. I think that was a great trade by Dallas. Just to get, kind of the veteran presence, and she fits. She fits her talents offensively. She's a great 3-point shooter, great spot-up shooter. She can play both guard spots. So I think it's a great fit for what they want to do over there, which is push, play fast, shoot a lot, get up and down the court. So yeah, it's gonna be a really fun team to watch, and I think they can make some noise in the playoffs this year.
And I believe that was well, Marquez. This will mark the first time since 2009 that we'll have a intrastate WNBA rivalry since LA had played Sacramento, and the last time that happened was 2009. So I think that's a pretty good added bonus or incentive too, is you'll have an interstate rivalry in the WNBA between Dallas and San Antonio. But Marquez, how about your thoughts about the Wings in their 2016 inaugural season?
They're going to be good. I feel like they should make the playoffs and I'm going to definitely be looking to see how well Powers plays with the pieces they already have, because I really was a big fan of hers coming when she came out. And one thing I will say she may struggle with at first is consistency, because that was a problem for her up at Michigan State. But when she gets that figured out, she's going to be a really, really good piece for them. And Hamlin, they're confident in her as well, and I'm really interested to see how well she can play alongside some of the post players they have down there. But Skylar coming back and Glory, they're going to cause some trouble for some people out there, and I think they're going to be a really fun team to watch because they're going to score a lot of points from everywhere. So I think they're going to be a force from now and in the future to me.
Yeah, and Mike, I think that they're just slowly getting themselves on the map and saying, this isn't a team that seemed like Tulsa many years ago where they were walkovers and, they were the doormat for the Western Conference and for the league. Mike, any thoughts about the inaugural year down there with the Dallas Wings in 2016?
Well, if Skylar didn't get hurt last year, that team would have been, I would have said the wild card, the team that would have messed up all the brackets, and the Dallas Wings could be the team to do so again. There's going to be a bit of an adjustment process with Glory having to sit out 7 games, but it seems like everything that happened between her and Griner is past, we hope. So we can get... we hope. Yeah, that Dallas-Phoenix matchup could get real interesting. Lynx Mercury and then Wings Mercury. Those are going to be my two but as Eric, I think, alluded to, bringing Phillips in, kind of a similar design to Wakrana Williams. Fred Williams, the head coach, really had some camaraderie and really got this team moving in the right direction. And most of those pieces are coming back. The Aerial Powers, we all know what she's going to do, but the great thing about it is she's not going to have a lot of pressure because she's going to have a lot of talent in front of her to help out. This is a team that I think their success will be centered, of course, around Skylar Diggins, and it's only because she has improved immensely since her rookie season. They've got a great mix of youth and veterans. Dallas, don't be surprised if they make a deep run or maybe surprise a couple of teams with this new format, of course. Who knows what happens, but Dallas, they're my upset special. If they're my upset special in terms of getting to the finals, maybe winning it.
And I should mention, too, guys, a few of those PHX games against Dallas will be on national television, so brace yourselves, perhaps. Who knows? Shortly, switching gears, switching gears real quick. Switching gears from Dallas, of course, shortly now to the LA Sparks, who have had probably a couple of back-to-back years to forget for a franchise, as we know. Is also the team that will celebrate their 20th season. Again, we'll talk about that before we get off the air tonight again about the 20th season. But Shorty, with LA again, okay, maybe this is perhaps the time that they finally do something right. I think that with some of the moves they made, Essence Carson coming over, Chelsea Gray with that second-round trade during the draft earlier on, may have bolstered them a little bit. And plus, with them having their entire starting 5 back, where they were missing pieces, either injury or rest last season. Shorty, thoughts about LA's 20th season coming up on Sunday?
Yeah, so quickly before I get into the Sparks, I do just want to make a correction on the last team that we talked about, the Dallas Wings. I talked about them possibly pushing a Game 3 in the playoffs, but with the new format change, that is impossible, depending on where they
fall. You would need about 75 overtimes.
Yeah.
to equal a 3-day equivalent.
Yeah, so that's the minor correction there. But as far as Los Angeles goes, I mean, yes, Los Angeles is my team. That's not a secret. But I'm just hoping that they have an improved year, because I know last year was tremendously tragic. I mean, so many things going on. Crystal, so many things going on. Parker rest, which was much needed, and KT had the commitment overseas, and without Parker mainly, I mean, this team, even with bringing back KT and having NECA coming back from injury for the most part, they were still, out of place, finishing 3-15 by the All Star break. But once she came back, going on an 11-5 run to ultimately make the playoffs, where they were crushed by Mike's team, the eventual Minnesota Lynx.
They did push it to 3 though, so
they
weren't a
did.
pushover.
I'll give them credit for that, but I'm just hoping that this year, having all their pieces back, they would look to improve. We talk about LA and three-point shooting, hopefully that will improve because they were second to worst in three-point percentage, only shooting 29%. That is not going to cut it. So hopefully, bringing that in and Parker having an improved season. We all know about the Olympic thing, so I won't bring that up. But hopefully that can fuel her for this year, to have a great season. Hopefully an MVP-like season, so that'll be one thing to look out there. But as far as pace, Mike brought up pace, and LA was one of the slowest teams in pace last year. So hopefully the offense moves a little faster, and again, hopefully the LA Sparks have a better season.
So again, Crystal, we know that there was, some roster turnover for LA again, getting rid of some puzzle pieces, getting Essence Carson via free agency again, the trade for Chelsea Gray. A lot of foreign import players coming in as well during the offseason. But again, I think it's important, though, to note again that LA will have Candace Parker for the full season. Plus, that their starting 5 is back together again after, not being together for, much of last season, and a lot of turmoil and a lot of, turnover there with those with the starters last season. I think that they finally, pushed the right buttons to get, some better talent on that bench as well. KT, how about your thoughts for LA going forward in 2016?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts about LA. One of them is the bench. I just hope the bench is improved. I've always said the reason why LA couldn't go far is because they didn't have a bench, and hopefully the cuts that they have made or they're going to make works in the benefit of the bench, because the starting 5 is great. We all know how well the starting 5 plays, but the bench is what's really the issue. And for Shorty, I actually heard that LA is looking to push the pace a lot this season.
They need to.
I hear they're trying to, run a little bit more, which is probably why some of the cuts they've made is probably the reason why they've been made. As far as LA, shooting is a big deal. We were terrible. There was a couple of games I went to. I just understand what was going on. They couldn't hit sand from a beach ball, so it was terrible. But hopefully they do better. Hopefully we don't have to see Minnesota again, which we will. But hopefully we win all those games. Hopefully they win all the games with Phoenix. I just want it to be a better season overall.
So, Eric, again, as we've already brought up again with LA, again, bringing in some vets, at least with Chelsea Gray and Essence Carson coming over. Eric, your thoughts about the Sparks going forward in 2016 with, again, starting 5 back in place, fully healthy going forward. Brian Agler, second year at the helm. What do you think?
I predict that they will not be 3-15 at the All-Star break. Don't think
Olympic break this time.
Olympic break, yeah. I'm sorry. There was no All-Star game. But yeah, I agree with Crystal. They definitely address some needs, I think, with three-point shooting. And, of course, having a full season of Candace Parker is not bad either. I think the question is, will they finally be able to overtake Minnesota and Phoenix in the now irrelevant Western Conference? I'm not so, Chris, I'm not so sure about that, but they're going to make it really competitive.
So we got Eric saying it'll be competitive. Marquez, what do you think, though, about Los Angeles going forward with 2016? Again, as we've already brought up, starting 5 back in place, Parker fully healthy going forward, and again, Brian Nagler has maybe has a better opportunity here now that he has his full squad back at full strength. What do you think?
Well, for Crystal's sake, I hope Seattle does not sweep them again.
No.
um, I think they're gonna be better than they were last year, of course, because everyone's back. Hopefully, they won't have to worry about injuries this year. Because I mean, I think if they can piece everything together, they're gonna be a top team. Because Candace Parker, she's just amazing at what she can do for them on the court. And I think if they can shoot a little better and their bench can add just some production, I think they'll be in a good spot.
Some production.
And Mike and when Candace Parker was sitting out last year, I recall being on the network before the rebrand and stuff, and I kind of, I just didn't, I mean, as a fan, I didn't really appreciate the fact that everyone was, that mostly it was the LA fans giving Parker, the cold shoulder or the bad rep on Twitter or on social media for her, giving herself a break finally, and then you saw how she played in the second half of the season. My goodness gracious! I mean, it's amazing to see what half of a season break did for her last year. Now that she's going to play a full year now and again, like I said last night as well, did not play a full overseas season. Played bits and pieces in China earlier on before the Christmas break. So, Mike, now that Parker's back to full strength, and again, you saw how she played, I'm sure, during the postseason, even before then when they'd come to Minnesota in her first game back when they were in Minneapolis last year. Mike, what are your thoughts though going forward about LA going forward with 2016 with all the puzzle pieces back intact?
Well, a couple of points on Parker. Had she played enough games, she would have led the league in assists. She was averaging 6.2 a game. She was second in efficiency rating, and I think I recall her saying she just rediscovered her love for the game. And for everyone who was giving her a hard time, even I was, about, Parker can't play all 5 spots, she proved that, hey, she's a pretty good ball handler. So you've got a very versatile threat coming back, and no Olympics to worry about. So whatever you want to make of that, that's going to give her a month off. So that only helps LA in terms of rest. We hope nothing happens to Parker because she is really fun to watch and is a very versatile threat, as we've seen before. The thing with LA, just over the years, doesn't matter who their coach is or what happens, they just have a hard time winning the big series. And that's something I noted last year is for LA to be taken seriously, they need to win a playoff series with meaning or make, whether it's a deep run or even just knocking off a team that's given them trouble with Phoenix and Minnesota the last few years. And for whatever reason, they just come up short. I'm still not sold on Agler as a head coach, and I know they're saying they're going to try to pick up the pace a bit. It seems LA is still a bit front-loaded. They're getting a little bit of help there. They're one of the teams that have a lot of cuts to make. But that being said, the front court is a very good one, and now you've got Parker in there who can kind of shift around as needed. LA, they're going to have a tough time, I think, in the West just because, well, I did that again. The former West. Because the teams that were used to being the West are also really good, but you don't underestimate a team with Candace Parker. But I will advise, because this happens a lot, not with us per se, but with a lot of the other folks. If the Sparks go on a 5-game losing or winning streak, don't be quick to claim them as champs or out of it. This is a team that can be kind of streaky, but really, for the Sparks to be taken seriously, for Parker to really make her statement, they've got to win a clutch playoff series. Maybe this will be the year they do it.
Yeah, maybe, and I agree, Mike, about them losing with by 1 in 2012, 2013, recently as well, and then with the past couple years being a pretty rough go, maybe 2016 is that breakthrough year though for Parker and for Los Angeles. Shorty, the Seattle Storm, of course, with back-to-back first-round picks, who the Sparks will play for the 3rd consecutive season, either in Seattle or in Los Angeles, to open up their campaign. Coming off a 10-24 season, but of course, Brianna Stewart up there now, and of course being led by Sue Bird, of course, still doing her best to keep the Storm, up to snuff up there. Shorty, your thoughts about, a pretty young team going forward with the Storm in 2016?
I mean, they are going to be a pretty young team with the exception of a Sue Bird and Crystal Langhorn, but I definitely think there's going to be a lot to cheer about in Seattle with the acquisition of Brianna Stewart and then the continuance of last year's #1 pick in Jewel Lloyd. There's also Kalina Mosquito Lewis as well. And also Tokashiki. I think she'll be very fun to watch as well. But just for the Storm, I mean, I've been reading a lot of articles from the ESPN pundits, and they're saying that the Storm look like they may be on track to be somewhat of a contender this year, even though they don't look like that on paper. Still, they might be better than everyone thought with Brianna Stewart. But I just say this one thing, and that's they may be better than they were this year. But if they're not, then that's okay too. I mean, I think a lot of people are putting so much pressure on Brianna Stewart in particular, to carry the load for them. But I just say, uh, allow the Storm to take their time and Brianna Stewart individually to get, accumulated within the WNBA. Just let her take her time and let the Storm overall, take their time to build up themselves, and we'll see where they go this season.
So again, Chris, like I said, once more again, Seattle and LA again will face each other again for at least the third consecutive season, either opening up a home-and-home series or Seattle visiting Los Angeles to start off a season. So, Crystal, again, like we said, and I think we've said though plenty of times that Seattle looks like they're ahead of schedule with this rebuild mode that they've been kind of stuck in the past couple seasons. Crystal, your thoughts for Seattle's 2016 season?
I just plugged my headphone out. That was weird. I think Seattle. I still think they're in the rebuilding phase, but I do think they will be a little bit better than last year. They definitely will be sweeping LA again, that's for sure. I'm calling that right now. They're not doing that. We're not going to allow it. But I think they are going to be better than last year. Hopefully KML gets more play time than she did last year. I would love to see how her and Brianna Stewart can play, and I love the way Jewel Lloyd has developed. Jewel Lloyd's going to be the future of that team one day, and I love how Alicia Clark is becoming more of a scorer. So I think that team in the future will be okay. This year, I think they're still going to be so-so.
So, Eric, again, and I think you actually brought us up, though, I think over the offseason about, you were saying that Seattle was ahead of schedule with their rebuild. I think that Brianna Stewart being there, I think kind of helps that rebuild, maybe speed up the process a little bit. But, Eric, though, what are your long-term thoughts, though, about the Storm's 2016 campaign in your mind?
Yeah, well, rebuilds are pretty easy if you keep winning the #1 overall pick every year, No shade. Luck of the draw. Yeah, I think this team is still a year away from contention, but they still have, but the building blocks, are enviable. Lloyd and Stewart and KML, that's a pretty solid core heading forward, and they're going to be back in the playoff contention, championship contention before you know it. So I would just preach patience. I know Storm fans are used to excellence with Sue Bird and Lauren Jackson. It's coming back, guys. Just and if they're successful this year, I wouldn't be surprised either. That's just how talented these young players are.
Yeah, no, definitely agree with that. Marquez, how about your thoughts about Seattle going forward with their 2016 campaign, and again with those back-to-back picks with Lloyd and Stewart this year? What are your thoughts again? Pretty young team going up there in the Emerald City. What do you think?
I fully expect them to improve on what they did last year, and they necessarily don't have to make the playoffs because they're still rebuilding and getting themselves together. But, I mean, if they do, I wouldn't be as surprised because they have a lot of young, ready-to-go talent up there. And someone I really like for them is Jenna O'Hay. I feel like she doesn't get as much recognition as she should because towards the end of the season you saw her doing a lot of things, whether it be scoring or creating for others. And I really like what they've brought up there to get back to what they once were. So I don't think they're going to be sweeping LA, as Crystal said, but they'll definitely they'll be more competitive.
So, Mike, again, we talked about Stewart, we talked about Bird, we talked about Lloyd again, and, like Marquez brought up about Jen O'Hay kind of being an unsung hero with that Storm team last year. Mike, what are your expectations, though, for the Storm in 2016?
Tough to say. I think we mentioned Lauren Jackson finally retired, and unfortunate that she had to go the way she did. Speaking with some other folks about this, and we talked about this a little bit before the broadcast, there might be some pressure just because there's the two #1 picks, and some folks are going to gravitate to that right away, and so this will be maybe a pressure or a closer examination for Jenny Busek and her future with this team. Last year, didn't have a whole lot to work with, but the trade that shipped Renee Montgomery to Minnesota in exchange for Monica Wright made no sense to me. Now Monica should be healthy, and I think she's still on the roster. And she's a great defensive asset, so if she can come back and provide a spark of defense there, that might help Seattle win some games. But this is a team that still really needs to find their identity, and I think the big mystery in that sense is who's going to take over for Sue Bird. I don't know what their plans are moving forward, but you've got a pair of #1 picks, and so at some point, it's a question of when do people get impatient about them sort of reassembling themselves. But Seattle, I think, could win a few games. It's going to be really tough for them to make the playoffs with the rest of the field as it is, but there are some things to watch, and like I said, I guess the big question is how does Monica Wright come back after kind of being hobbled for the last year or so. I think she'll give them a much-needed dose of defense.
Shorty, the final team we'll get to with our team-by-team breakdown before we get to some 20th season discussion before we wrap up for the night. Of course, Shorty, is the San Antonio Stars coming off an 8-win season last year, and right now there really, I believe, is probably no sense of direction for the time being with them trying to figure out a lot of things with either roster turnover. Of course, Dan Hughes will be stepping aside once the season does end. Of course, Ruth Riley is now their new general manager. Shorty, what is the long-term game plan for this year for the Stars in your mind?
I think the long-term game plan is just to hopefully build up the young talent that they have and to ultimately, turn the team into a playoff contender. Because I know this year is just in no way they're making the playoffs. They got young talent in Mariah Jefferson and still have Dirk Hamby. I'm not sure what was up with that trade for Monique Terry, but I'll get back to you on that. It's just a lot, with this young team. I know Ruth Riley as their GM. They're now GM. She's going to come in and continue to help pick up where Dan Hughes will ultimately leave off, and hopefully, build a contender in the future. But as for this year, yeah, they're not going to do much. Of course, they have Kayla McBride as well, along with the team. But yeah, they're just going to be looking to build in 2016.
Crystal, what do you think about San Antonio? Again, we talked about their, perhaps, no sense of direction, forks in the road, or what the actual game plan is. Crystal, what do you believe, though, or what do you think about San Antonio's longevity in 2016?
Well, because our fan in the episode right now, I'm going to keep it kind of light. I don't think the Stars are going to do that well, to be honest. I think they have, but I do think they are moving in the right direction as far as Ruth Riley now being their GM. I think Ruth Riley is gonna switch that team. So with the Adams, I think she's letting people know that you're safe. But this year, it's gonna be a long road. It'll be long, but in the future years, I think San Antonio might.
Right.
All right. So, Eric, well, what do you think, though? Again,
Leave us in suspense.
Eric, we've talked about this already plenty of times. Again, what is the game plan? What is the game plan for San Antonio? Again, Eric, I think that right now, it's really blurred right now about what they might be doing for 2016. Eric, what is their plan, perhaps, in your mind for 2016?
Your plan for 2016? I have no earthly idea. You can ask Marquez about that. He probably has a better idea. For 2016, well, I don't know because you think because they're like a rebuilding team, they'd want to keep as many like young players as possible. But that's why that Monique Curry trade made no sense to me. Um, but Dean Hughes is a pretty sharp guy. What I want to see is what they is you have Mariah Jefferson, you have Kayla McBride, you have De'Erica Hamby. Those are pretty much your three building blocks going forward, right? But who else? Because you need more than just three possiblies going forward. The rest of the league, they're not just going to sit around and feel sorry for San Antonio just because they lost the draft lottery last year. That's not going to happen. So they need more post production because Hamby is not the only one who's going to be scoring down there. Because you look at like Gina Pell, Caleb Alexander. Those aren't players who are going to score a lot of points for you. And I just want to see how Mariah Jefferson does. I think she's going to get really thrown into the fire because D-Rob, she's going to be out indefinitely with that Achilles procedure, and Mo Jeff, she comes from a pretty great pedigree in UConn, but the WNBA is a whole different animal. So how will she perform? Right out of the gate.
So I guess if you want to fully get more stars coverage, we'll just go and grab the bull by its horns and talk to Marquez about it. Marquez, what at least what you gotten perhaps from either other people that perhaps, what kind of game plan or what kind of thoughts have you really gotten from the Stars in regards to what their plans look like for 2016?
Well, for me, I think the first thing that they need to do is establish a sense of identity because they don't really have one, whether it be becoming a defensive-minded team, offensive-minded, or someone that's just going to push and transition all the time. You don't really know because, to me, a lot of the pieces that they have don't exactly mesh. And whether I don't know where you can point the blame to that besides sometimes poor drafting and what you think that they would do doesn't necessarily go that way. And three-point shooting is something I don't think they completely addressed because, we finished last in that department last year, and the post that hasn't been answered yet, and I still want to know what's up with that Guath me at 14 thing. Like, to this day, I still try to make sense of that because Minnesota took away got Gia for they got to steal, and talking to people where the offense is going to come from, that's a big concern because say what you want about Danielle Adams, she at least was some type of scoring punch, and so was Gia, so that is a big concern for me because you saw in the preseason how they struggled to conjure up some points, and you can't do that if you want to win. And this year, I'm not expecting much, but I would like to see just a little bit of improvement, whether it be in one area or multiple areas, but it's hard to say what they're going to do because, it's so unpredictable that if you try to make sense of it, you'll end up getting a headache.
So I guess that's a pretty good way to put it. Mike, what do you think though about San Antonio's 2016 season? We know that there's been a lot of influx of roster moves, draft picks, trades maybe, but what do you think though, Mike?
Well, there may be some more headaches, even if you don't try to make sense of what's going on with San Antonio, and here's why. Just coming off of last year, going off what Marquez said, this was the only team in the entire league to score less than 70 points per game. Mm-hmm. They were last in overall field goal percentage at 39.0, and they also gave up the most rebounds out of any team, and they didn't really seem to address any of those needs, at least offhand, with the offseason transactions or the draft. So this is a team that is probably going to struggle a lot. It's finding a new identity. We don't know what that's going to be. Who's going to be the centerpiece of this team without Danielle Robinson? Sophia Young retired, and McBride is probably going to be carrying a lot for the team this year. And how is she going to be able to handle such a responsibility? And we'll also get to see, I guess, what Ruth Riley can do. I don't know if she's had any front office experience prior to this, but this is her first time working behind the scenes after having a pretty stellar career in her own right. So how's that going to play out? But there's not a lot to suggest that San Antonio is going to correct the field goal problems and the rebounding problems, at least right away.
With that, folks, there is your 12-team team-by-team breakdown. And we'll now, folks, move now to the 20th season celebration. But first, we'll get to the key dates to keep in mind for the 2016 season.
Dos Equis.
Yes, it all begins tomorrow with the tomorrow, folks, is when the teams must have their final rosters cut down to 12. Must be submitted by 2 o'clock Pacific, 5 o'clock Eastern. May 14th on Saturday will be the start of the season officially with WNBA tip-off brought to you by Verizon Wireless. The whole month of June will feature WNBA Pride Month. July 22nd is the final date of games before the Olympic break, which begins on July 23rd. The 2016 Rio Olympic Games will go from August 5th through August 21st. The Olympic break officially ends August 24th, with the second half schedule opening up on August 26th. Trade deadline will be at 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock Eastern on August 30th. September 6th through the 13th is WNBA Breast Health Awareness Week. September 18th will be the end of the regular season, with playoffs beginning on September 21st, and October 20th is the last possible date that the WNBA Finals could take place this season. With that, Shorty, of course, a monumental milestone for the WNBA. You know, people have said that it wouldn't be here this long. Well, 20 years, I believe, says they can be here 20 years, Shorty. And again, through, naysayers, through a lot of transitions, and either in regards to teams folding and disbanding, and yet, Shorty, through 20 years of, a lot of things, the WNBA still stands tall. After 2 decades of what they've done and what they tried to do back in 1996 when they formed the WNBA with the original 8 teams and what it's grown to and what it is now. Shorty, as you kind of put it in perspective as we get ready to start the 20th season, what is your overall thoughts, though, again, about, the WNBA being here for as long as it has? Again, 20 years of WNBA basketball, the longest-running women's professional sports league.
I would just, put everything into perspective as, the league in its entirety being survivors. They survived the good and they survived the bad. They survived the good and seeing, the first 4 championships, being won by the Houston Comets, and then the Sparks came along, winning back-to-back titles as well, and then you saw a lot of, they survived, through the downs. You saw a lot of franchises fold, some relocated as well, and they survived through a lot of presidents as well, league presidents, and Ackerman, Oriender, Ritchie, and now Borders. They just went through a lot, in this league, and they also, survived the naysayers who, said it wouldn't last long, it's boring, it's this and that, but they're still here. They outlived a lot of things, that said, it would take the league down, but they're still here today, and that's a testament to their perseverance.
Crystal, June 7th, probably the marquee game of the year outside of Phoenix, Minnesota, Saturday. June 7th is when the Liberty will take on the Sparks at Staples Center on ESPN2. Probably 20th season or the 20th anniversary celebration, much like they did 5 years ago when they had the 15th anniversary game in 2011 at Staples Center between New York and Los Angeles. Again, that's going to be something, I think a spectacle really, to really see outside, again, of Minnesota, Phoenix tipping off the season as well on Saturday. But again, Crystal, through all the, through everything that the league's gone through, again, what does it mean, again, for the WNBA to be here 20 years later? That idea, we'll go just move away from Crystal to Eric. Eric, what do you think, though, again, about the WNBA being here, 20 years later after it was founded?
It's amazing. I don't really say it because, I wasn't really a fan of the league when it first started, but just the fact that it's survived so long and it's thriving, compared to, as Shorty said, it's the longest lasting women's sports league of its kind, and I don't see it going away anytime soon. So, here's the 20 more years.
Marquez, 3 teams will officially celebrate their 20th season. The Stars kind of unofficially will, had they not have moved from Utah to San Antonio when the Jazz let them go many years ago. But again, with the Sparks and Liberty and Mercury still being here from day one or from square one, again, I think it means a lot, though, again, that, that this league has been here, paving the way for, for role models towards, up-and-coming female athletes at any level. Marquez, what are your thoughts, though, again, about the WNBA being here for 20 years come Saturday?
It's pretty incredible. It's an accomplishment because I will say, me, the way I discovered it, just like fumbling through TV channels and just stopping across, I think an LA Chicago game because that was Sylvia and Candace's first years. That's how I started watching. And to see how it's grown in terms of like teams and just like the things they've accomplished, it's really incredible to say that you've been able to see that happen. And I don't see it going anywhere for another 20 because I mean it's just going to get stronger and it's just an incredible product to watch and I'm glad I watched.
Mike, and with me being a big fan of the league, since I've been a big supporter of the league since 2004 when I'd gone and watched DT play a game at UConn while I was visiting my uncle and aunt out there who have been season ticket holders for the Huskies for who knows how long. And just falling in love with the game, and that's what got me into it, along with seeing Candace Parker, Candace Wiggins both drafted 1 and 3 in 2008, and all the other nonsense that I have in my life with Wiggins and everything else included. We won't go there, of course. But Mike, with you also covering either prep or college or even the WNBA for as long as you have, again, what does it mean to you though to see the WNBA still living and thriving 20 years later after it was founded?
Well, there was a point that Michelle Volpel made a few years ago when you get to the seemingly annual claims about the league folding, and she had said, at some point, you have to accept reality, and the longer that this goes on, the less likely it's going to go away, and I'm convinced it will not go away. We saw, I think, Adam Silver with the interview he gave last year and then kind of clarifying what he meant by his remarks. He wants to see this league succeed. He's putting in a lot of time and effort into it. To see it make 20 years for any league is a remarkable achievement, and I think folks who want to rip on WNBA or any other league, you forget that all these other leagues, the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, they all had very small beginnings. It took the NBA about 30 years to catch on, and that was because of the Magic Larry rivalry, Bird Johnson, so to speak. I was a convert. I think like many others, I didn't follow the league that closely until I started covering the Lynx as a beat writer back in 2009, but from that time I've been able to appreciate their style of basketball, and I'm one of those folks that believes that men's and women's basketball can coexist. And from a local perspective, there were quite a few folks who were looking at me kind of oddly when I first started covering the team, because that was during their lean years, and they had a lot of them. And folks are wondering, like, what are you doing? This is a team that doesn't do a whole lot, and now they've won 3 titles. Maybe they'll win more, who knows, but there's some envy about what I'm able to do, and of course I don't have any control over the number of titles they won, but I consider myself grateful that I've had an opportunity to chronicle this transformation on Minnesota's end, and what they've done for women's basketball in this state has been remarkable. They've grown their fan base immensely. These players are kind of local celebrities, and who can forget Prince invited the team to a private concert, God bless, after they won the last year's championship. So in 20 years, and there's an increasing level of respect, and I would keep telling folks who maybe are a bit frustrated that we haven't seen them grow larger, or maybe some folks who still aren't convinced yet, give it time. Every league goes through growing pains, transitions, expansions, contractions, and once they can clear those hurdles, everything comes up roses from there. And we're getting closer to that point. Lisa Borders seems to bring a level of excitement, and even in the draft, that was something my colleagues noted, that she just seemed really excited to be there, and that's something that we didn't necessarily get out of Laurel Richie. So I think there's a lot of optimism as we get into this 20th year. They're taking advantage of it. There are several initiatives, as you pointed out. Probably the long-winded answer, but yeah, count me in for another 20 years.
Yeah, I think we all are, except maybe the fact that Crystal had technical problems. Crystal, again, we know again that we know the struggle that you and other female athletes have to sadly go through day in and day out again, and we've seen a lot of the WNBA players and even U.S. women's national soccer team players go through it as well. Crystal, what does it mean though to you though as a college basketball player though to have seen a league with people with your ilk, of course with the WNBA, lasting 20 years in this day and age of social media bashing and everything else that has gone on towards this league in its entire time of existence?
No.
What else needs to be said?
Face palm indeed. With that, though, folks, again, WNBA 20 will tip off on Saturday night across with plenty of games. Folks, again, Dallas will take on Indiana. New York will take on Washington on Saturday, of course, as well. The big game of the night, of course, our feature game of the night on the network Twitter handle, of course, will be Phoenix, Minnesota from Target Center at 4:30 Pacific. As well, that game can be seen on ESPN, the mothership on ESPN on Saturday, along with Atlanta hosting taking on San Antonio, and Chicago taking on Connecticut at home from Allstate Arena. With that, though, folks, again, we went past our 90 minutes here, so we went 124 and change. But hey, we got through everything we wanted.
My apologies.
No problems, Mike.
I love to talk.
Don't worry, Mike. We love talking here too. We try to keep it at an hour, but hey, this is the first time we've gone past our scheduled slated start end time. With that, though, folks, we will sound the final horn for the final time of the preseason, and this has been the preview show for Eric Nemchok in Elmhurst, Illinois. Maybe if Crystal Thomas can hear us in Los Angeles, along with Alicia Stewart, Marquez Anderson from the great state, or from joining us from LSU, and also to our pal from the land of 10,000 lakes. I left off a zero there. Sorry, Mike. Mike Peden joining us as well. Mike, thank you so much for stopping by and joining us this evening. We look forward to having you on the program probably during the Olympic break, perhaps. Who knows? But again, Mike, thanks for stopping by and joining us. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you. I'd be happy to come back.
Absolutely. With that, folks, this is Cal McClurg in San Diego from Studio 171 signing off. We'll see you folks back here on Monday night. Enjoy the opening weekend, folks. And again, cheers to another 20 years of WNBA hoops. We'll see you folks back here on Monday night. Enjoy opening weekend 2016, and good night. Bye-bye, folks.